evening and welcome to What's Happening. I'm Gail Burke. I'm here with my two co-hosts, George Binns and Elliot Margolis. Tonight we're going to be discussing questions 1 and 3 on the Massachusetts ballot. But before we get into that, I'd like to take a minute to just talk about the general election. We know that the election is turned into something really nasty. And I just want to speak to the voters and say that this is what comes many times between the Democrats and the Republicans. The Clintons are known for their nasty way of treating their opponents. And that is what is happening now. It's turned into a brawl. Donald Trump is fighting back. Now remember, especially the Republicans remember, this is what we have asked our Republican people to do when they get into Congress. We have elected Republicans to Congress to fight back against the Democrats. Twice. They haven't done it. Donald Trump is doing it. If you're going to try and beat Democrats, as bad as it is, sometimes you have to fight back the same way that they're fighting. This guy is going to do it. So I hope that you will understand what is happening and think about the issues, which is what should be being discussed. And I hope that you will look into it, educate yourself, and make the right decision on November 8th. George?
Well, I got a slightly different take on this, that both parties have badly misunderstood their base. If it wasn't for the superdelegates, I'm firmly convinced that this would be the Donald versus the Bernie, because both of them are appealing to a different group that the elite in both parties totally ignored. And I think the point you're making about the Republicans went to the Tea Party and said, hey, support us and we'll make all sorts of changes, and it didn't happen. So, yeah, they got the support, but they also got the alienation. And the strategy, the tactics, the cleverness of Donald Trump, I think, is tapping into that organization or that group. And the other group that he's working with or appealing to is the lower middle class working folks who used to have good jobs until they got shipped overseas. So there's a different demographic out there that was totally ignored by the elites, and it came back to bite them.
And just so I can get my 2 cents worth in, one thing that's very important to remember, okay? We have talked amongst ourselves many times about term limits. Donald Trump has said that he will fight for a constitutional amendment for term limits for Congress, period. And that, I mean, that's a good example of why everybody in the quote-unquote establishment are opposed to Donald.
Yeah.
Because he's different. He's for us.
And he's upsetting the apple cart.
He's upsetting the apple cart. And the problem is Democrats and Republicans alike in Washington aren't smart enough to understand that people are fed up with the kind of government that we've had. Donald can change that. Anybody who thinks that we ought to have term limits and doesn't vote for Donald is basically saying they don't believe in term limits. It's really that simple. You got to go by the issues. I do a lot of this stuff on Facebook. And when I do it on Facebook, and the liberals on Facebook have nothing but nasty things to say about Donald. He's a misogynist. He's a xenophobic. He's this, he's that. They compare him to Hitler. My suggestion to them has always been, let's talk about the issues. Because on the issues, immigration, the economy, foreign policy, Donald's ahead on everything. Because he's explained his issues. He talks about some of the issues. The Democrats don't, because they lose on the issues.
Well, that's why they always get involved in personal attacks.
Right.
That's
why
their
they do-
modus operandi.
Right.
It always has been.
But this show is supposed to be about the this book that you got in the mail, and this book is about the questions, and we're going to be talking about questions 1 and 3 this week. So, Gail, why don't you talk to us about number 1?
Okay. Number 1 is expanded slot machine gaming. They expect 5 casinos to open in Massachusetts by 2019. Ballot question 1 was written by one casino developer for his own gain. Vote no, I believe, until there is a review of the costs and benefits of existing Massachusetts gaming establishments, because there really hasn't been one. There is a casino that is scheduled to open in, they call it Wynn Boston Harbor, because originally it was supposed to be just in Everett, and now they've included Somerville. The people in Somerville don't want it. The mayor of Somerville is very much against it. The mayor of Everett, on the other hand, is very much for it. And I don't know whether you're familiar with that area, but I'm very familiar with that area. And the traffic congestion over there right now is terrible. I don't know how they're going to get around that without spending an incredible amount of money.
Well, basically, I think it's come down to is Massachusetts has missed the boat on gambling. Las Vegas took off right after World War II, and everybody got on the bandwagon, and we'll have Atlantic City. We'll get that into a gambling capital. Well, even the Donald had to close up his casino in the Atlantic City area, and Vegas has turned into a family type of venue where you go to see the Cirque du Soleil or you go to see some fancy acts, and it's very, very much family oriented. The bloom is off the rose. It's too late. And you look at the state of Massachusetts, we're surrounded by Foxwood, Lincoln Downs, and all the rest of these other places that already have gambling facilities, and we think we're going to take business away from them, which means that if they open these casinos, they're going to be cannibalizing, Foxwoods and this kind of place. And nobody has a big enough crowd to make it pay.
Well, there's a couple of things. Number one is you've got Twin Rivers in Lincoln, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got places all over the place now. What's happening is Mohegan Sun's not doing as well as it used to. Foxwoods isn't doing as well as usual. I have to go to Atlantic City once a year for trade shows, and I'll tell you, it's a disaster there. There's only 5 hotels open now.
Yeah.
It's terrible. So many have closed. Casinos have closed because it's just there's only X number of dollars that people have to spend on gambling. Atlantic City, you got to watch where you walk because it's a very dangerous place. Okay?
I think that happens with a lot of these casinos.
And it does. Yeah. So why do we want to, we're doomed to failure. Yes, some casinos do well. No question about it. But the more casinos you have, and there's plenty in New York now, and there's in Pennsylvania, the more you have, the fewer people are going to go to each one of them because it's spread out too much. Mm-hmm. It creates crime. And I think the worst thing from my perspective, okay, is we have a state that is totally irresponsible in spending money. Completely and totally irresponsible. With all due respect to Jerry Paracella and to Joan Lovely, the state is incompetent in spending money. Why would we give them more money to spend?
Yeah. And I think the point they make in this book is that we haven't opened the first casino yet. Why do we want to start adding more to it? And we don't even know if the first gambling bill that was passed several years ago, and as you pointed out, the first casino was, 2019, I guess they start to open up. until we find out, is it working or not? What kind of problems have we inherited with these? I think we ought to go slow and see if they work before we keep adding more to the pile.
I agree. And again, getting back to the traffic problems, Everett is a real blue-collar town, and it's congested enough as it is. I used to work in Everett, and I know how congested it is.
And think of, okay, they're going to build these big casinos, billion-dollar casinos, right?
Yeah.
Let me tell
And
you
hotels.
something. Let me tell you something, okay? They don't build these billion-dollar casinos so that you can gamble and make money.
No,
that's
no.
not how these buildings work.
That's right. Yeah.
You're going to lose. There's no question about it. You're going to lose.
You're going to be entertained.
Who is going to come to Everett for entertainment other than gambling? That's all it's going to be. I mean, it's not like it's a resort town. Everett is not that way. Neither is Somerville.
And there's no good way to get to Everett. That's the problem.
That's
In the
the
morning,
problem.
93, forget it. In the evening, 93, forget it.
Yeah. Oh,
Route 1, forget it.
Yeah.
There's no
Terrible.
good way to, you can't get there from here.
No. And even if they put one in where Suffolk Downs is, that's Revere.
That's halfway to Boston on Route 1.
Yeah, it sure is. And try to get to the airport now without all of this congestion.
Yeah.
And Bell Circle. The improved Bell Circle is not much better than the old Bell Circle. So I don't
It's
know
not a
who's
circle
making.
anymore, but that's okay.
Well, I don't know who's making these kinds of deals. Somebody must be making money
Somebody's
on it.
making money on it, yeah.
I don't know. Can we look to the State House at the last
Yeah,
two
somebody's making
Senate
some-
majority leaders who ended up in jail? I don't know.
So
Anyway,
the consensus is very simple. Vote no.
vote no
Vote
on
no.
question 1.
Yeah, we agree on that. Shocking, I say, shocking.
Yes.
All right.
Onward to question 3. Who wants to take that one
I'll
on?
let George take that one on. This one's kind of foul for me.
Yeah. That one bothers me from the fundamental premise that there's a bunch of people that is trying to get everybody in the state on a guilt trip. The poor chickens in the cages, or the poor pigs, or the poor veal, calves that make into veal, are treated miserably. And therefore, we ought to do something about them. And what they don't recognize is the farm industry has evolved into this procedure for good and valid reasons. And one of them you get into is, okay, when young chicks are hatched right out of the eggs, you immediately have to, if you're going to survive or have the chicks survive, clip their beaks. Why? Because they're predators. They go after each other. And they will have a serious problem. And it's naive to think you can just turn them loose in a field someplace and they're going to live a happy life like a Disney cartoon. It doesn't work that way.
Let me ask you something, George. Do you like white meat or dark meat?
Dark meat.
Bad example. How
I
about
like
you?
white meat.
Okay, so here's the thing. So she likes white meat.
All right, where are you going
know,
from
where
here?
am I going with this, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Brace yourself.
Ducks are a dark meat animal
Right.
because they're a wild animal, okay? Most people are like Gail in some respect in that they like white meat and chicken. You let them free range and walk around and run around, and you're going to have more dark meat and less white meat because they're going to be more wild.
Yeah.
And that, by definition, a wilder animal is going to be a dark meat because it turns to muscle.
Yeah.
And so if you like white meat chicken, you got
no.
to vote no. I mean, that's an extreme, but I mean, what kind of, you know me.
Well, I want to talk about the eggs, too.
Well,
The
the
price
market
of eggs.
itself is going to sort it out.
Yes, it already
There's
has
enough
started.
feelings going around that, okay, we ought to have cage-free eggs. Costco has cage-free eggs. At least that's what the label says.
Market Basket does, too.
Yeah, so a lot of places have. So if you want to buy them, buy them.
Yeah.
If you don't want to pay the price for them, you buy the regular eggs.
Yeah.
And eggs gets to be a really quirky thing. Well, you got to have the brown eggs or the white eggs.
In the white eggs are cheaper for some
also,
reason. I
but
don't
also,
know.
when you think about it, the cage-free eggs, I mean, I've purchased them before. They don't taste any different than a non-cage-free egg, but they cost 50 to 75 cents a dozen more. So you let the chickens run free, you're going to pay more for your eggs.
Yeah.
You're going to pay more for your chicken. Your food bill is going to go up.
Yeah.
It's the way it is.
That's right.
So when you vote, you have to understand that. You're going to get more dark meat and you're going to get more expensive chicken if you vote yes on question 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess the consensus is vote no on question 3. See, we agree on both of them. Amazing.
Shocking, I say, shocking.
And I guess we ought to do a quick review of 2 and 4 because we did them last week with Michael,
Right.
and I don't think we were successful in convincing him of the wisdom of our ways.
No, he was in favor, not in favor of
But basically, I think
expanding charter schools.
we,
Of
Gail
what?
and I at least, reached the conclusion that charter schools ought to be supported
Yeah.
for lots of reasons, and they should vote yes on the charter schools. And legalizing marijuana for recreational purposes is asking for trouble.
I
And-
think we all agreed on that last week.
yeah, and there's,
Yeah.
well, Michael came up with some of his thoughts about being a libertarian, that anybody should be able to do anything they want as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else.
Yeah.
But it does hurt other people, and
Yeah,
that's the
that's-
problem.
That's the
Well,
problem.
it
That's
hurts
the
other
problem.
people, and it also gets into a situation that if you get yourself into an overdose situation, for instance, somebody's got to come and do something about you. At least the cops have to come and give you a shot of Narcan and hope that that'll snap you out of it.
Well, first of all, I want to put my 2 cents in on charter schools. I'm in
Oh,
okay, because Michael took my place last time. I am in favor of charter schools, and I think that anybody who is in favor of quality education should vote for the charter schools, because one thing that you find is that competition makes everybody better.
Yeah.
So if you have charter schools competing with public schools will get better.
Yeah.
By definition, that's what's going to happen. And charter schools are public schools, and why would there be such long waiting lists for people to get into charter schools if they weren't good? So
Well, that's it. It gives you
I'm in
choice.
favor of charter schools.
gives people
Well, the
choice.
other point I think we need to reiterate is the schools do not lose money,
That's right.
because basically it isn't the school's money in the first place. The money goes with the kid. And as I pointed out last time, that if a kid from Manchester by the Sea wants to go to Beverly High School, the town of Manchester has to pony up tuition to the city of Beverly for that student. And it's the same thing with a charter school. If the kid goes to a charter school, the town or city he comes from or she comes from has to provide that tuition. So the tuition, the money for education belongs to the kid. It goes with the kid. It doesn't belong to the school.
And
And
the
if
thing about charter schools, too, they're given 5 years. If they don't make the grade in 5 years, they're closed.
Yeah.
And the traditional public schools, if they adopted that, I think we'd see traditional public schools closing all over the place.
Well, as Elliot's pointing out, they would have to meet the competition, and they would have to get
That's
better.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why if you go to the North Shore Shopping Center, you see there's about 6 or 7 different jewelry stores. And they're all in business, and they're all doing business. Why? Because this competition brings people in and makes each store a little bit better.
Yeah.
Competition works. Competition makes people better, makes businesses better. It'll make the schools better. There's a reason why the teachers union doesn't want charter schools, and that's because they have to work.
Well,
They have to worry about the kids and do things for the kids and give them a better education. That requires work. Charter schools have discipline. We've been to charter schools. We've seen the kids. They learn. They're interested in learning. And I think if you've got a kid, you want them to go to a charter school because that's where education happens.
And they pay far more attention to discipline,
Right.
which is not found in a
Well, I
lot of
think
the public schools.
The big thing with the charter schools is there is no excuse.
Right.
The dog ate my homework doesn't cut it. So
Yep.
you got to perform, you got to meet the standards. And it's not like, oh, well, the poor kid, he must have had a problem. Get over it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you
It's-
don't get educated by,
And most of these kids come from poor situations, low income, maybe not a complete family. Father may not be there, mother may not be there, but they succeed. So all of this business that we hear about in the traditional public schools, because children come from broken homes, they can't learn, is ridiculous. Of course they can. You just have to have some rules, and everybody follows the rules.
Ben Carson's a good example of somebody that went
Absolutely.
in a lousy school system, but his mother was very strict. You got to learn, and
Yep.
look at what he came up
Yep.
with.
yeah.
I mean, you need parental support. There's no question about you
yeah.
need parental support. But you need quality teachers. You need an incentive to do a good job. You also need discipline. No learning comes without discipline. That's the best thing about the athletic programs in public schools. Coaches can discipline
That's
the kids.
right.
Okay? And that's why they do well in athletics. Athletics is a good educational tool because of the discipline.
Too bad it didn't carry over to the classroom more.
Well, it is too bad. I know when my kids did something wrong or when I did something wrong in school, my parents would say, okay, I'm the one that's in trouble. I'm the one that screwed up. Nowadays, my kid didn't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be something wrong with the teacher. The teachers are fine. It's parental support.
Most of them are.
Most of them are fine. Of course, get rid of tenure and then all of them
Yeah.
will be fine. But that's a separate issue. Discipline
Term limits for teachers too?
No, I just think
I
they
think
need to
that's
be
a great
responsible.
idea.
When you were working, if you didn't do your job, what would happen?
The way GE worked, 10% got laid off every year.
Well, there you go. You've got to do your job.
Yeah.
It's real simple. Teachers have to do the job, and if they get tenure, they don't necessarily have to do their
No.
job. Let's move on to number 4.
Well, let's just say that I think we all agree that we're going to vote yes on charter school expansion. Okay.
Okay, number 4 is the legalization of marijuana. Marijuana, to me, number 1, is a gateway drug.
Yep.
Number 2, I don't know whether we want to get people impaired by marijuana. We have enough people impaired by alcohol when they're driving. If they're impaired by marijuana when they're driving, and one of your kids gets hurt, what are you going to do? We don't enforce the drunk driving laws very well. I mean, how many people get 5, 6, 7, 12, 13 different chances before they get arrested, for crying out loud? And how many times
they
do
get
they
arrested, but nothing ever happens to it.
Yeah.
Right. And then they get a Cinderella license anyhow, so you get caught drunk driving and, oh, okay, well, don't drive, after work, but you can drive to and from work. What kind of a penalty is that?
And
I don't
how
want
is it
people-
enforced? I mean, how do the police
That's the
enforce
problem.
it?
It's not enforced.
You're putting more
So-
pressure on the police.
I don't want to see more people impaired driving to make the roads less safe than they already are.
Well, the argument that they give is, well, it's only available to people over 21. Oh, really? I thought alcohol was as well. You know that kids have ways of getting into it. They get their friends or their friends' brothers, sisters, or whatever to buy it for them. And the younger kids are going to be using it.
That's why all college campuses are dry, because most.
Right.
Oh, yeah, there's no problem on
There's no
college
problem on college campuses.
You
because
smoking something? You're not sharing?
most people who are on college campuses are under 21, so they can't get alcohol.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Seriously, you look at the opium problem we've got right now, and one of the characteristics of it is our feeders for the businesses, athletes who get injured. And because of their injury, they're given some serious painkillers. And one thing leads to another, and they're addicted on opium or heroin or something else. And the same thing is going to happen with marijuana, that people will get it for whatever reason, medicinal purposes, I don't know, and they'll start sharing it around. And we've already got enough of a problem with the opium, the heroin, and all the rest of that. Why do we want to add another problem to our list that we can't solve right now?
One of the arguments for it is, well, we'll get all this tax money for
Right.
it. And again, I stated earlier, and I'll state it again, we have state representatives who are irresponsible with our money now. Why give them more money to be more irresponsible?
Or what
Well-
they found in Colorado is, yeah, we're getting a lot of tax money from this, but we're also spending a lot of money because of the
That's
problems that the legalized marijuana brings.
And the marijuana isn't just for smoking. They have candies and cookies
Oh, yeah.
that are going to appeal to the real
Which,
young
by the way,
kids.
if you have a little party at your house, you have some candy and
Yeah.
cookies, and because nobody under the age of 21 is going to be at your house eating those cookies and
No.
candy, right? And how about the kids during trick-or-treating?
Oh, my gosh.
You know,
Yeah,
you don't
that's
think
true.
people will put marijuana
Yeah.
cookies in the baskets? Think about that.
Oh, yeah. There's too many things that
gonna
can go wrong. Yeah.
There's too many things that can go wrong with it, and there's too many things that our state legislators can screw up with more money. So,
And they wouldn't take it upon themselves to pass a bill banning it.
right,
They left it up to us,
right.
which is sometimes the way that they avoid dealing with a problem.
The other issue that comes in is an old joke about how would a terrorist get an atomic bomb into this country? Oh, they smuggle it in a bale of marijuana. We have a problem with the borders right now that are as porous as can be imagined. And lots of things are coming across the border, and it's not being controlled. And yeah, I'm sort of getting back into the general election kind of issue.
And you have 30
That's-
seconds to do it.
We're all finished?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
There's a good article in the Salem paper talking about a drug bust when they caught up with this guy. He was swallowing balloons of black tar heroin, drinking the water to get it down so he wouldn't be caught with the drugs. That stuff comes out of the west coast of Mexico with total immunity, and it's showing up here in Salem, Massachusetts.
And Hillary Clinton wants open borders.
Yes.
So there you have it on the questions. And Gail just nailed down, if you want more marijuana in the area, and if you want more crime in the area, and you want open borders in the area, vote for Hillary. If you want a little more control over crime, you vote for Trump. If you want term limits, you vote for Trump. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.